everyone. We're broadcasting live from the Infinity Festival in Hollywood, and I'm Erin Reilly, professor of the University of Texas at Austin and a strategic consultant of the Infinity Festival. We're bringing Silicon Valley innovators together with Hollywood storytelling professionals, and I am sitting down with experts in the field of immersive to give advice to the next generation. So my guest here today is Vicki Dobbs Beck from ILM X Labs. Welcome. So Vicki, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do in this field.
Sure. Well, I run ILM X Lab, but I've had a long, long history with Lucasfilm. I've actually been at Lucasfilm for 27 years over a 31-year span.
Wow.
And I've done many, many things, and I've seen the company evolve over that time. So I have to say, though, in all those 27 years, this time right now is one of two favorite moments in my career. And it's because I think we're really at a pivot point. I think immersive is enabling us to tell new kinds of stories and put people at the center of those experiences in ways that they've never been able to do before. So it's what an opportunity.
Yes, I completely agree. I've been a Star Wars fan since 1977 when I stood in line for that first movie. So it's exciting to see how over multiple generations, Lucasfilm has really kind of understood audience and understood fans at the heart of storytelling. So in your own words, since you do believe that this is like a pivotal moment, how do you define immersive?
Well, that is interesting, and I think I'll answer that by saying when we first founded ILM X Lab in 2015, our goal was for people to step inside our stories in a way that was never before possible. And that's actually evolved further, and now what we're trying to do is transition from storytelling, which is essentially a one-way communication, to story living. So what story living means to us is we put you in a world that your actions matter, and that you have meaningful connections with characters. In the future, hopefully there will be a persistence to that. There will be shared experiences, but all of that, I think, is a new opportunity that's never before been possible. And immersive, I think, is not specific to VR or AR, because I've seen amazingly immersive experiences that use projection mapping and so forth. Mm-hmm. But I think what is really at the core of immersive is this idea of putting you in a world and giving you the opportunity to engage with that world.
Totally agree with you. So I'm running Texas Immersive at UT Austin and really trying to point out the importance of multiple disciplines coming together. And you've been in this field for a very long time. What are the types of disciplines that come together? Where do they come from? What are they learning? Where do they begin?
One of the interesting things right now, because immersive is relatively new, your students have a huge advantage, right? Because there is an immersive industry and they can approach it from a more multidisciplinary basis right now.
Right.
But before, so when we were creating, establishing ILM X Lab, we were actually bringing people from many different backgrounds. So we brought people from film and visual effects, from sound design, and from the games industry and the interactive design industry, and to some extent the attractions industry, because there's an element of that. So all of these people come together to create these experiences. It is really a very collaborative, very team-oriented, highly iterative, actually, process. So I think having an understanding of what is special about each of those different disciplines is quite important. So in our world, because again, immersive is new, people are learning from one another. So people that are coming from film, they tend to value the visual fidelity, the linear storytelling, the sound design, because sound's obviously an incredibly important part of immersive experiences. People coming from the game space or the attraction space is all about the experience. What are you doing? Mm-hmm. Is it fun? Do your interactions matter? Mm-hmm. So again, we're learning from one another, and we did grow out of ILM. So ILM obviously has done, 40 years of visual effects for a very high quality visual effects for feature films. And one of the interesting things that some people don't realize, and I share when I'm talking to audiences, is that when you watch ILM visual effects, it often takes, 10 minutes, hours, sometimes overnight to render a single frame of film.
Yeah.
When we're working in interactive, immersive space, we have 11 milliseconds. We're rendering in real time at 90 frames per second. We have 11 milliseconds per frame.
Wow.
So to kind of bridge that gap, between, because we aspire to make it as cinematic as possible.
Right.
And that's part of who we
then
are.
You feel like you're
right?
in the world.
Yeah,
right?
and that's part of who we are. But that means that this is getting back to why you have to be able to learn from one another. So while people coming from film understand what it takes to create these highly cinematic, beautiful, images, effects, etc., the folks that are coming from the games industry understand how to make good choices so that we can still deliver as close to cinematic quality as we can, but you have to do it in a way that it enables you to render at this very high frame rate.
Right. And you come with an MBA background. And I actually teach advertising and PR and business students as well who really want to get into this field. How do they enter and participate in this team-oriented work?
Yeah, so that is an interesting question. I mean, my path has been a
zig and a zag.
A zig and a zag for sure. I think what my specific role is to be a catalyst for innovation, for creativity, and what that means is everything from how to build strong collaborative teams, developing business models where they don't currently exist, really understanding how to, in our case, in some ways, we're like a startup inside of a large company.
Right.
And so what does that mean? How do we position ourselves to be successful in that kind of a setting? So it is. That said, I do believe with immersive, I think it's getting to a pivot point. I think this festival actually, I can't even believe the difference between what I'm seeing today from what I saw a year ago.
Me too.
So
amazing.
It's amazing. And so what it says to me, it reaffirms that yes, it's not just me believing that this is something that is important and growing, that is actually genuinely true.
So tell me, I want to kind of drill down a little bit on those business models because you guys partnered with The Void. And The Void was really one of the first for location-based experiences. Yep. How does that unfold? Because students are always asking me, how do these partnerships evolve?
Yeah, well,
or come to be?
That's a lot of what my job is, which I didn't mention before, but it is a lot, establishing these partnerships, understanding what the opportunities are, and figuring out how to make it mutually beneficial. So, interestingly, when we first started out, location-based wasn't top of mind. It hadn't really emerged yet. And we had, our focus actually was on, VR experiences in the home.
Right.
Was going to be the initial one. And so we embarked upon some early development of what became Vader Immortal, so an episodic VR story series. But along the way, we became aware of The Void. They were, of course, aware of us. And we could see an opportunity for some real synergy, right? This was a way that we could bring people into the immersive world with a fairly low barrier to entry, right? They didn't have to own the headset. They didn't have to own an expensive equipment. They could do this with others. And also at the same time, the other thing that helped with all of that is that Disney, The Void was a part of Disney's Accelerator program. So they were already, kind of in the Disney family.
Right.
And then we had, of course, this digital production capability with a mission to help people step inside our stories. Plus, we had the IP. So it was really serendipitous and an amazingly fruitful partnership. But the reason that we didn't pivot. We actually sort of paused. We continued our development of Vader Immortal.
Right.
but at a slower rate, and kind of focused a lot of those resources on creating Star Wars Secrets of the Empire.
Which I love.
Thank you. Well, what's great about it is everybody understood the business model, right?
Right.
You pay for a ticket, you get to go through an experience. And if you have a great time, you come back with, other friends and you do it again.
Yeah.
So that,
or you just stay and do another one.
Or you stay and do another one. I have heard that too. So that's awesome. But that having a business model that people already understood was a huge leg up. And so with Star Wars Secrets of the Empire, it made us, a few things crystallized as a result of that. First was this idea that we should be focusing both in location-based immersive adventures, which gave us the opportunity to deliver scope and scale and invoke all those senses, right? Because you control 100% of the environment. We wanted to continue developing VR episodics because we wanted to engage with deeper storytelling, something that you could do when the experience is much longer, when it's in the home. So we had two pillars then once we went down that path. And then from a creative perspective, from a storytelling perspective, we wanted to see how can we meaningfully connect those experiences so that if conceived holistically, and the whole is truly greater than the sum of the parts.
That's right.
So each experience would be fulfilling on its own, but again, if taken together, you really get this much, much bigger experience. So Star Wars Secrets of the Empire is essentially a prequel to Vader Immortal.
Right, that comes out.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're talking about today.
Yes, Vader Immortal Episode 3 is coming out on November 21st.
Yeah, exactly. It's exciting. So you're like literally the masters of world building. Everything you're talking about is what we try teaching the students in class about transmedia storytelling and world building. And I love that you're saying each one stands alone, but at the same time, you get a deeper fan experience if you actually go and participate in all of the different episodic as well as the Void experience. Yep. Are you tying it also to the movies that are out, or?
We actually have not. In the case of both Secrets of the Empire and Vader Immortal, which, again, one is just preceding the other,
right.
We intentionally chose a part of the timeline that is between Episode 3 and Rogue One, which is a time when it was really... If you think about it, Darth Vader had gone through this very significant transformation. Physically, he'd lost Padme.
Right.
And there was not a lot of storytelling that had been done in that area.
Right.
In that juncture in the timeline. So we thought it was actually a rich opportunity to give you a different way into Darth Vader's world. And it is a part of the canon now. So that's exciting on its own, that it's not just about film and television, but that you can actually, use immersive storytelling as a way to extend the canon. And I think in some ways, so it obviously is inspired by the movies,
right.
But it's not directly tied to the movies.
A thread
exactly
throughout. It's interesting because we talk about where are the threads, and I think fans are always trying to find in canon where the connections are.
Yeah.
Trying constant fanfics and diving into those different communities to see those stories. So I want to go back a little bit to audience and to really think about, are there key characteristics or kind of a framing that y'all always refer to when making sure that story building is now story living and the audience is at the center?
Well, I think we had an interesting process on Vader Immortal. We started actually with a more passive experience.
Yeah.
We were going to put you in a scene, and the scene essentially unfolded around you, and you were, in essence, a ghost. And as we were in development, we realized that what we really needed to do was think about what was VR, in this case, uniquely capable of delivering that no other medium could, right?
Right.
And we came up with three things. The first was it puts you in the world of Star Wars. The second, and this was really the pivot point, is you directly engage with Darth Vader.
Right.
And then the third is you wield a lightsaber, right? So those were three things that you couldn't do any other way. And that gets back to this idea of the right story for the right platform. Somebody was asking me the other day, do you sort of like essentially port across, do you take a location-based experience and make it a home experience and that kind of, and for us that's not really where we're coming from,
right.
Because we want each experience to maximize the potential of that platform. And while they can be related in the way that we discussed, they're not duplicative of one another.
Right. And so, God, you're giving us so much rich information. I could talk to you all day.
Well, I could talk all day.
So I know that my students are sitting here listening to this live, and I'd love for you to just give us some advice on what are some of the hard skills and soft skills I, as a professor, should be making sure we're incorporating into courses that are getting students prepared to come work in the business side and the creative side of Immersive.
I think some of the soft skills I'll start with is definitely being able to work within a team. I'm sure you all do group projects where multiple people come together to create something that I would argue is better by virtue of bringing in different ways of thinking, different disciplines, all of that sort of thing. I also think a willingness to, especially if you're coming at it from like a leadership point of view, a willingness to think outside the box, to not assume just because something is that it needs to be. And I have challenged myself throughout my entire career to, like I said, be a catalyst for innovation. And by definition, you therefore have to be not only open-minded, you also have to be extremely flexible. I think you have to have intuition, right? You have to be able to see things and know how to adjust. So those are all the soft skills. And then, there's the storytelling. I think really understanding what interactive storytelling means, like learning from linear, learning from full-on, interactive, and finding that happy place. And then it's a very technical the field, the creation. Know the technology.
Great.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Vicki. We're here with Vicki Dobbs Beck from ILMX Lab, and we're live here at the Infinity Festival. Stay tuned.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.